Picture this. A world bathed in the rusty hues of iron oxide, a desolate landscape sculpted by ancient volcanoes and the faint whisper of a long-gone atmosphere. This is Mars, the planet that has captivated humanity for centuries, a celestial siren calling us to unravel its mysteries. But could we ever truly call this alien world home? Could we, with our fragile human bodies and insatiable need for creature comforts, actually survive on Mars? We've all seen the movies, the intrepid astronauts bouncing across the Martian surface, planting flags, maybe even digging up a friendly alien neighbor. But Hollywood often takes creative liberties with reality. The truth, as always, is far more complex, far more challenging, and honestly way more fascinating. So buckle up, space cadets, because we're about to embark on a journey to the Red Planet, exploring the mind-blowing hurdles and unexpected adventures that await anyone brave enough, or perhaps crazy enough, to attempt a Martian life. Okay, first things first, let's talk about the air we breathe, or rather the air you wouldn't be breathing on Mars. You see, Earthlings like us were kind of addicted to oxygen. Mars, however, has other plans. Its atmosphere, what little there is about as welcoming to humans as a black hole is to a spaceship. We're talking 95% carbon dioxide, folks. That's right, the stuff we exhale, the stuff plants love, is the main course on the Martian atmospheric menu. Imagine trying to breathe with a plastic bag permanently taped over your face. Not so fun, right? That's essentially what breathing on Mars would be like, a one-way ticket to Suffocation City. But wait, there's more. Not only is the air toxic, but it's also thinner than a supermodel on a juice cleanse. The atmospheric pressure on Mars is so low that if you were to step out onto the surface without a spacesuit, well, let's just say your blood would start to boil. So, unless you're particularly fond of carbon dioxide poisoning and spontaneous blood boiling, you're going to need a spacesuit. And I'm not talking about a flimsy Halloween costume here. I'm talking about a high-tech, pressurized, oxygen-providing, radiation-shielding, all-around bad boy spacesuit. Think of it as your own personal biosphere, a tiny bubble of Earth in the middle of a very unearthly environment. So yeah, breathing on Mars is not exactly a walk in the park. Alright, so we've covered the whole breathing situation or lack thereof. Now, let's talk about the weather on Mars. You know how here on Earth we complain about a little rain, a bit of snow, maybe a heat wave or two? Well, consider yourself lucky, my friend, because Mars laughs in the face of our terrestrial weather woes. Remember that super thin atmosphere we talked about? Yeah, well, it's not very good at holding on to heat. This means that temperatures on Mars can swing more wildly than a pendulum in an earthquake. On a good day, you might experience a balmy -20 degrees Fahrenheit, but don't get too comfortable with that -20. At night, things get really interesting, or rather really cold. We're talking temperatures plummeting to -200 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to make your eyelashes freeze solid and your eyeballs turn into Martian ice pops. So what does this mean for our intrepid Martian colonists? Your Martian vacation wardrobe would consist primarily of high-tech thermal gear, heated shelters, and enough insulation to make a polar bear jealous. Oh, and let's not forget about the dust storms. Imagine trying to stay warm when the sun's blocked out by a raging dust storm. The temperature is plummeting faster than a meteor, and you're bundled up in more layers than a parfait. So yeah, weather on Mars is not for the faint of heart. Okay, space travelers, let's talk about something we all take for granted here on Earth, gravity. That invisible force that keeps our feet on the ground, prevents our coffee from floating away, and makes us curse every time we climb a flight of stairs. Gravity is just one of those things we don't really think about until it's not there. And on Mars, it's a whole different ballgame, literally. You see, Mars is significantly smaller than Earth, which means its gravitational pull is weaker. About 38% weaker to be precise. Now at first glance, this might seem like a good thing. Imagine being able to jump higher, lift heavier objects, and finally dunk a basketball, all without breaking a sweat. It's like having a superpower, right? Well, not so fast. While low gravity might seem like fun and games at first, it can have some pretty serious long-term effects on the human body. Our muscles and bones, you see, are used to the constant pull of Earth's gravity. But in a low-gravity environment like Mars, our muscles would begin to atrophy, meaning they would shrink and weaken over time. So, while the idea of bouncing around on Mars like astronauts on the moon might seem appealing, the reality is that living in low gravity would require a whole new approach to health and fitness. Chapter 4. Dust in Every Crevice, the Martian Housekeeping Nightmare. Okay, let's talk about something that's both fascinating and slightly terrifying. Martian dust. Now we all know dust here on Earth. It collects on our shelves, hides under our beds, and generally makes life a little bit messier. But trust me, Martian dust takes things to a whole new level. Imagine the finest, most insidious powder you can think of. Now imagine it's coated in toxic chemicals and has a particular fondness for clinging to everything you own. That's Martian dust in a nutshell. You see, Mars is covered in this incredibly fine reddish dust that's been whipped around by eons of wind and storms. And this isn't your average run-of-the-mill dust bunny material. This stuff is made up of iron oxide, which gives Mars its distinctive color, but also contains things like perchlorates. Now, perchlorates are not exactly something you want to be adding to your morning smoothie. These chemicals are toxic to humans and can interfere with our thyroid function. Chapter 5. Bon appetit. It's Martian potatoes for dinner, again. Alright fellow Earthlings, let's talk about something near and dear to all our hearts and stomachs, food. Here on our home planet, we're spoiled for choice. We can walk into a grocery store and find aisles overflowing with fruits, vegetables, meats, cheeses, and enough processed snacks to last a lifetime. But on Mars, dining takes on a whole new meaning. Forget about takeout, forget about fancy restaurants, and forget about your favorite brand of cereal. On Mars, it's all about survival, and that means growing your own food. Now you might be thinking, hey, I've got a green thumb. I can totally rock a Martian garden. And while it's true that humans have been cultivating crops for millennia, doing so on Mars presents a unique set of challenges. For starters, Martian soil is not exactly what you would call fertile. It lacks the essential nutrients that plants need to thrive, and it's also chock full of those pesky perchlorates we talked about earlier. So, before you can even think about planting a tomato, you'd need to detoxify the soil and enrich it with the necessary nutrients. Then there's the issue of water. Chapter 6. Is anyone out there? The silent struggle of Martian solitude. We've talked about the physical challenges of surviving on Mars, the thin air, the freezing temperatures, the ever-present dust. But there's another challenge that might be even more daunting, the psychological toll of living on a desolate, alien world. Imagine this. You wake up every morning to the same reddish-brown landscape, the same silence broken only by the hum of machinery, the same faces of the small crew you're confined with. There's no escaping to the park for a change of scenery, no meeting friends for coffee, no losing yourself in a crowded concert hall. The human mind, you see, craves connection, novelty, and a sense of belonging. We're social creatures by nature, hardwired to seek out interaction and stimulation. But on Mars, those essential elements of the human experience would be in short supply. The isolation and monotony of Martian life could lead to a whole host of psychological challenges, from anxiety and depression to sleep disturbances and difficulty concentrating. Imagine trying to focus on a complex scientific experiment when you haven't had a meaningful conversation in weeks, or trying to maintain a positive attitude when the only view outside your window is a barren, windswept desert. And then there's the issue of communication with Earth. Even with our most advanced technology, there would be a significant time delay in sending and receiving messages. Imagine trying to have a real-time conversation with your loved ones back home, only to have your words met with a lag of several minutes. It's enough to make you feel like you're living in a time warp, disconnected from the world you once knew. Outro Mars, one small step for humanity, one giant leap for potatoes. So, could you survive on Mars? Technically, yes. With enough ingenuity, determination, and probably a healthy dose of luck, humans could eke out an existence on the red planet. But it wouldn't be easy. It would be a life defined by constant challenges, resourcefulness, and a deep appreciation for the simple things we often take for granted here on Earth. It would be a life where every breath of air, every drop of water, and every bite of food would be a precious commodity. A life where the line between exploration and survival would be razor thin.